It's time for Lean In with Dr. Marlon on CCFM 107.5, unpacking the connection between spirituality and academia.
Yes, good evening, family. My name is Phineas Wahaswatsane. Welcome to Leaning In with Dr. Marlon, the man of the hour, where we are discussing chapter 13 of his book called Academia and Spirituality, where his two worlds come together. You had a little bit of a taste and a little bit of a trailer from the previous presenters about what we're going to be talking about. But let me check with the man of the hour. Sir, how are you doing?
Well, and you, Phineas?
You well?
Awesome, man.
How was your week?
It was good.
Was it good?
Yes. I really enjoyed it.
You were a lecturer. What were you lecturing about?
No. We on the writing exams, and then we go into our winter break.
Okay. And do you have to be one of the people who have to mark?
No.
You're not?
No.
So you just teach and disappear?
Not disappear. No. I'm always, there's even if it is a virtual presence.
You still stick around?
Absolutely.
Okay, sweet. So, chapter 13.
Yes.
Interesting chapter that I had to dive in. Very short, very sweet, but very challenging at the same time when you speak about adaptability.
Yes.
And that for me triggered a lot of things. I remember the first time when I came to Cape Town from a village. It was a very interesting time where I had to, when you have that village mindset, then you move into a city. And then you used to greeting the old people on the street. And now you're in Cape Town, you're greeting everybody, and everybody looks at you a little bit weird. And you're like, what is wrong with me? But then I realized that I'm in a new environment and I have to adapt. I think the first thing we should do is define what actually that word means, and then we'll go deeper into it.
Absolutely. Can just before we do that, can I just share the socials?
Yeah.
Actually just share the WhatsApp number.
Yeah.
So WhatsApp number is 065 798 1075. Again, 065 798 1075. And hello to Miss Michelle Hector.
Hello, I love her. She's always with us.
Absolutely. she mentioned that she's putting her alarm on.
Yeah, she's a loyal listener.
Yes, because Monday holiday last week threw her out.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. But fortunately, if you miss the show, you are able to connect with Dr. Marlon on his YouTube. Do please follow him, and then you will be able to listen to this part of the conversation. Dr. Marlon, adaptability. Yes. You spoke about that very intensely in your book. Very interesting, very challenging. And you gave a little bit of a brief of how some of us need to learn to let go.
Yes.
Because it's a little bit easier when we let go than it is when we hold on.
So when this all started out, was that it's the adapt or die. So that is one of my first lessons that I got to was the adapt or die. Mm-hmm. And that was interesting for me. Mm-hmm. That if I don't adapt, and that has all got to do with, you listen to the evolutionists.
Right.
The Darwin theory. Uh-huh. If you're the fittest shall survive. Yeah. If you don't adapt, you're going to perish.
Yeah. I mean, somebody told me that dinosaurs don't exist right now because they refuse to adapt.
Yes.
To the climate change.
Correct. So, look, there's many theories. Yeah. But this adapting is adapting to your environment. Is adapting to the way of doing things. Yeah. It's a way of where I would go and say, do you know what? I actually need to change my perspective. Because adaptation is not just physically. An adaptation takes place, or the ability to adapt would take place in spiritually. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Would take place in my thinking, in my thought process, in my behavior. Mm-hmm. And those are all the difficult things, that I need to navigate.
Yeah, but how do you change without changing yourself?
Look, how you change is...
Without changing yourself.
So you're going to have to explain that to me.
I mean, it's more like, when the Bible speaks about do not conform to the patterns of this world, and the scripture is very clear, not about conforming. So for me, it's like I have this picture of water. How do you conform into a space but not lose your flavor or lose your taste or lose who you are? Because sometimes you go into university and then the environment there demands you to be a certain person. But a lot of us end up changing who we are in order to be part of, going back to the whole authenticity thing that we spoke about. How do I change or adjust to an environment without changing myself?
Sorry, I just need to make a correction. I actually ended up reading the WhatsApp number incorrectly.
Okay, that's fine.
The WhatsApp number is 061. Phineas, maybe that is why we never get WhatsApps.
I wonder whose WhatsApp number you gave.
I have no idea. And apologies to 065.
Yeah.
It's 061 798 1075.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Audrey. That is actually just
No, that's good.
wrong.
How do I adopt into a space, or how do I change without changing myself? How do I conform into a space without
I think
my flavor as
yes.
Phineas?
Look, I think firstly that I need to sit still in the moment. I need to understand who Marlon is.
Yeah.
Phineas needs to understand who Phineas is.
Yeah.
And not just understand the person in terms of understanding character.
Right.
Understanding, and this was interesting and encountered during the last few days, was understanding what are the things that have shaped my existence.
Right.
What are the traumas that have shaped my existence? What are the teachings? And I know trauma is an interesting topic for you that you always come back
We're
to.
not going to talk about that.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about it.
Yeah.
So it's understanding what are the things that have shaped Marlon's life. The journey until this point.
Yeah.
If I look back at that journey, what are the fundamentals of that journey that has brought me? So what way did I walk? The path that I walked.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. 100% of us, 100% of us are oblivious of our path. We're oblivious until we awaken to it. Until we become aware of it.
Yeah.
And how do we become that self-aware? Is when we start examining. Is when we start asking ourselves the question, was this the correct behavior?
Is it because maybe Phineas has defined himself too early to the point that, he cannot or he doesn't want to change? Because sometimes you define yourself too early and say, this is who I am. You found me like this. I'm not going to change. You're going to change.
Yeah.
And I think that's the death of many people, because they refuse to evolve.
Yes. That is straight out of the ego.
Yeah.
I am who I am.
Yeah.
And I will remain that way. In Afrikaans, they have a saying, so gemaak en laat staan. So that's the way you got him, and that's the way you're going to get.
Yeah.
There's nothing evolutionary about the person.
Yeah.
I do the same things over and over. And there's an issue for the person.
Yeah.
Because they don't get to grow to their full potential. Right?
Yeah.
So when I look at that journey, Marlon first walked the journey which was based on others' evaluation and interpretation of who he is.
Right.
So now I'm flooded by, in my formative years, which is now until about the age of 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And it comes from in utero for about the age of 3 or 4. And guess what? Marlon's mother used to say he's such a good boy.
Yeah.
He's such a this and he's such a that and he's splendid at this. And then other people came along and says, Marlon is actually an idiot. Why is he laying on the shopping mall floor, kicking and screaming, wanting gifts?
Yeah, it's one of those situations where you say your child can sing until you take them to South Africa has talent, and then they embarrass themselves in front of people. Maybe it's because we expose certain parts of us to certain people, and in other places we behave differently because of their adaptation.
Absolutely.
Because I don't always show up into spaces as I am.
Yes.
I show up in spaces as who I'm expected to be.
Correct.
So, and I have to, because if I don't, then I will not be maybe accepted or appreciated in that space.
The moment we drop that, the moment we appreciate who we truly are, then irrespective of the environment, I will show up as the one who needs to show up.
Right.
I am the Marlon that shows up. I don't need to remember that the next time I get to this group,
I have to be
who
different.
I have to be.
Oh, yeah.
I've even heard people have accents. That when they're with a particular group of friends, the accent changes. I thought that was weird. But guess what?
Yeah.
The way I spoke in terms of the language that I use and the terminology that I use changed with groups of friends.
But and we do that for survival?
Absolutely, because I wanted to feel part. Remember, a big thing is about belonging.
Belonging,
Right?
Yeah.
So if I belong in a group, or I want to belong to the group, I tend to take on the shape of that group, the form of that group.
But then people call you two-faced or a chameleon. You become unpredictable. I can't put a finger on you.
Yeah, but here's the thing. People are not that. People are only interested when you act and behave outside of their expectation.
Yeah.
So the moment I've made a particular group used to my behavior, then they go, okay, that's Marlon. The moment you act different to that prototype or that model that you put out, they're going to go, yeah, there's something wrong with Marlon.
But maybe there's nothing wrong with Marlon. Maybe there's something wrong with the system.
Here's the interesting part before I go to the system. And yes, Michelle, it is acceptance. But here's something interesting about that system. I find it in my own home. I find it to those close to me, my siblings. We have all grown up.
Yeah.
Marlon is expected to act in a particular way.
And then we use that as a formula for every family.
Absolutely.
Every family must act like this, but every family is different.
Every family is different. Every family member grows.
Yeah.
So we have these snapshots of what our siblings are about.
But you speak about growth. Some people will be like, you have changed, Phineas.
Yes.
But I'm like, no, I haven't changed. I've grown.
And exactly. And that change was the mere fact that they say you have changed.
Yeah.
You have moved away from the model what they see you as. The lenses at which they're looking at you, you have changed those. That you have changed that paradigm or that behavior. And now they go, Phineas is actually acting out of the ordinary.
Yeah, he's a rebel.
Yes.
Yeah, we need to
sort him out. We need to curtail him. We need to bring him, put him in this box.
Yeah.
And that is interesting, because the same Marlon that left primary school is a different Marlon that started high school.
Yeah.
And that was just 6 weeks in between on school holidays.
Yeah.
Imagine when you start meeting friends that you haven't seen in 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
I not too long ago, I don't know where I was, and somebody greeted me, but the way the person greeted me was he actually greeted the 18-year-old Marlon.
Ooh, so they greeted you and interacted with you based on where
they left me. So Heidi loves saying that.
And you're no longer where they left you.
I'm no longer.
You changed the address.
Absolutely.
You can't send the package to the same place.
I'm just where they left me when I was 18.
But how do you bring them to your level then?
And how I bring them to that level is to understand that, hey, cool, man, I haven't seen you in a while. But you know what? This is, and guess what? Many a time by reacting to what they say.
Yeah.
Because that's the hook. Hey, put how's the game, man? Blah, blah, blah. It's the accent is there.
Yeah.
And you start answering differently. And you start going, hey, Phineas,
Yeah.
I'm well and you. How are things? God is good, eh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, now you find this backpedaling and you can see it in their eyes. They backpedal and they go, who's this guy?
Who's this guy? I mean, a lot of times it's like, you grow up in a high school, you go to the same school with people, and then you meet each other in different spaces, or you meet each other in the same job.
Yeah.
And you realize that the person that you used to bully, now that you're a boss.
Yes. That's the weirdest, eh? That's the weirdest. And I just want to mention on exactly the one of the examples that you mentioned is that I would never ever speak to Phineas. I see him every day in my community.
Yeah.
But guess what? Now I run into Phineas while we're in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Or I run into Phineas somewhere in the UK or in the States.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I want to invite Phineas for tea. Come hang out with me.
Yeah.
But you walked right past me for 15 years while we were past each other in Blue Route.
Is it maybe because you're not at the same level and can't speak the same language, and sometimes we gravitate towards people who are at the same level as us?
Sense of belonging.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's South African.
Yeah.
I'm South African.
Yeah. We have a common.
There's a common thread here.
Yeah.
So when people, how people excuse that I've changed, or how people go, Marlon is different. it's because Marlon has changed to their narrative.
Right.
They still have that recording on loop.
Do you think people interact with us based on their perception of us rather than who we truly are? And sometimes we conform to that perception because we want to be part of.
Absolutely.
How do we change that? Because then that's people pleasing.
I give you an interesting that when I was active in the ministry, I had lots of people chatting to me. Hey, how are you doing? And then I retire.
Yeah.
And people are, I said to one person, just because I'm retired doesn't mean they took away the power of my praise. Because before that, you asked me, please pray for me, Marlon, please. And I go, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And then now after retirement, they wouldn't even want to greet you. So that was interesting for me. An interesting development.
How does God come into all of this when it comes to being flexible? I remember oftentimes when you go into a church or you go into a program, I love it when every time when somebody will have a program and then at the end or at the bottom they will say this program may change based on what the Holy Spirit wants to do.
Subject to change.
It's subject to change.
Yes.
So already they tell you don't be so legalistic and so religious that you're not flexible for anything outside of the program that you're being given. How important is that?
It's vital.
To be open.
It's vital.
Yeah.
I tell you why. Jesus says that you gotta forgive 70 times 7.
Yeah.
So he gives you 140 and 490 chances.
Yeah.
In which to work with.
Yeah.
In which to forgive.
He gave us something to work with.
Exactly.
The grace never runs out.
It never runs out. There's flexibility.
Yeah.
So whether you forgive once or you forgive 489 times, that's the flexibility of the grace. The grace does not change.
Yeah.
The offering of grace does not change.
Yeah.
The degree to which the grace is then implemented.
But the grace is not a license to sin or do whatever you want.
No, absolutely. Look, I cannot have carte blanche. I cannot eat unhealthy and depend on my genes.
Ooh.
Because it's my responsibility to eat healthy.
Yeah.
I cannot. And
that's why I think somebody said this very interestingly and said, Phineas, when you start going to the gym, you should never stop thinking about the gym. Because when you leave the building, the food that you eat is as important as you training.
Absolutely.
But sometimes with church, we go to church on Sunday, but we forget that we are the church throughout the whole week before Sunday.
Correct. So I become I actually if I look at my CV, my spiritual CV, then I only work on a Sunday. So I'm a casual laborer. It's only on a Sunday.
Yeah.
So
God does not have a full custody of you.
Yes. Yeah. No. Look.
He can visit.
No, he has joint visitation rights. So the visitation rights is between the enemy and God.
Ooh.
Yeah. So and what is interesting about the adaptability, Jesus actually says, clean yourself up, man.
Woo.
Wash your face.
Yeah.
Put on some lipstick.
Yeah.
Why you want to show the world that you are fasting?
Ooh.
Why do you want to show the world?
Yeah.
Because when you pray to me, pray in silence. Pray in your chamber. And then we can have this conversation.
Yeah.
And that's the adaptability. The adaptability comes about when Marlon says to God, okay, I tell you what.
Yeah.
You go. You carry this.
Yeah.
I'll follow.
I think when I think about adaptability, I think about the Good Samaritan. The parable. On his way to something, on a mission, but in the mission, he was disrupted.
Yes.
He had to adapt to the man who was wounded on the side of the road. So how do we as Christians live our lives in such a way that we allow God to disrupt us? And then we have to adapt.
So I want to start off with a statement. God never disrupts us.
Okay.
Whatever God shows in our lives, it's a disruption to us.
Come on. Yeah.
It's a disruption to us.
Yeah.
For my ego, it's a disruption.
Yeah.
I got a plan, you dude.
God, you disturbing me.
Yeah. God, some. One day I was told, you know what, this is the spirit. And I go, what type of spirit is this?
Yeah.
Shouldn't there be a program? And then I have to get taught that I need to flow.
You know those doors when on the door it says do not disturb. I feel like sometimes as Christians we have that. We tell God, don't disturb me. I'm too busy.
Yeah, I'm too busy for this.
And we don't understand that the busyness is a distraction from the enemy.
Absolutely. Busyness, the acronym actually, busy under Satan's yoke. Busy under Satan's yoke. Busy. So what we do is we get caught up in the busyness.
Yeah.
Because what the enemy does is the enemy always relies on distraction. Distraction away from God. Distraction away from Christ.
Yeah, they say he doesn't have to kill you if he can distract you.
Yeah.
He will just exhaust you.
Yeah. Look, he distracts you and he sees you killing yourself.
Ooh.
And what is interesting is that Jesus did things so differently. He didn't follow the norm. He didn't follow the Jewish custom.
Yeah.
They said to him, your disciples, do they fast? You know, why don't they wash their hands?
Yeah.
You know, why don't they do this? And he tried to tell them that whatever program you're running, whatever software,
whatever your agenda is.
Yeah, whatever your software is that you are running.
Yeah.
The ultimate purpose, my purpose, is to bring salvation and the relationship to God.
Is to fulfill the law, not to break it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's my job. You know, we can come, but we didn't do this. I didn't wash my hands, or I didn't wash my feet, or I didn't cover my head.
Yeah.
How important is that really?
Well, sometimes religion is much, the law. I think some of us worship the law more than we focus on on the needs, because the law will say, this is, but if you look at the law and what is morally right.
Yes, I agree with you. I come back to one of my quotes that I cannot call it one of my quotes.
Yes.
Is
You're
that
the doctor, you can say that.
Do not praise what God has given. God has given the church.
Yeah.
God has given, and we the church. God has given the church. God has given health. God has given strength. God has given jobs. He's littered our existence with blessing.
Yeah.
Do not praise what God has given. Praise God for what He has given. So when we fall in love with a church, I heard now the other day somebody say to me, since our senior pastor is gone, I don't really feel.
I don't feel the spirit anymore.
I don't feel the spirit. And I go, wait, dude. Just hang on.
Who are you in a relationship with?
Yeah, is the relationship with that guy? Because then I strongly suggest you follow him to whatever church he's going.
There's one of the pastors that I usually listen to. I forgot his name, and somebody was complaining and said, I didn't like worship today. And then he said to the person, we were not worshiping you.
Yeah. Not worshiping you.
Worship is not about you. We're worshiping Jesus. We're not worshiping you. So it doesn't matter if you like the worship or not, because it was not about you.
Correct.
But sometimes worship can become about us. If it doesn't feel right, it's not worship.
On Sunday, I had an amazing experience. I must share it with you and our family.
Yeah.
Is that I sat in church and I almost burst. It felt like I was going to burst.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to say something. And nobody asked me to say.
Yeah.
So here's Marlon sitting in church fighting against his ego. And the battle royale goes on.
Yeah.
Because in that moment, what Marlon was about to say was more important than what the Holy Spirit was to say.
Yeah.
And therefore Marlon struggled.
Yeah.
Marlon battled.
Yeah.
So he sits there and he white knuckles it through the message because he could bring the message so much different and better.
In the way you receive, because people, I think, receive differently from different speakers.
Correct.
But sometimes we end up comparing all these people.
Absolutely.
And we think some people are more anointed than the others. No, they're not anointed more than the others. They're just different.
They're just different. And here's where the adaptability comes in. Was for me to sit still.
Yeah.
And eventually, halfway through, and I think we were three-quarter, we were almost done with the ministering, that I realized, dude, you're in the wrong place for an ego-driven statement.
Yeah.
You just in the wrong place. The setting is not right.
Yeah.
And then that evening I went to bed and I just couldn't fall asleep.
Wow.
And I prayed the Our Father probably about 10,000 times.
Wow.
Very slowly.
You were convicted.
Articulated the Our Father, each and every word. And that calmed. It didn't calm me down.
Yeah.
It centered me.
Is it because we are afraid of change? Because I mean, a classic example of adopting is COVID-19. A lot of us, I think, struggled a lot with that because we love being in control.
Yes.
And when you are in control, you don't struggle so much. But I feel like also, being in control can give you a little bit of anxiety. But thinking about COVID-19 and being able to adopt, and be so frustrated, how do you deal with events like that where maybe there's death or something crazy happens? How do you change those gears? Because some of us, we don't know how to change the gears.
And the way to change the gear is to meditate on what God has given us. Let us meditate on that Our Father.
Yeah.
I've always heard this as a child.
Yeah.
This has happened for a reason. And then somebody comes along in my life and says to me, there does not always need to be a reason.
Yeah. Because sometimes we need a reason to justify what happened. But sometimes there's no reason.
And in that justification, we lose the teaching.
And then sometimes we'll be like, this painful thing happened for a reason. And we put God in that, and we think God punished me in order to give me a testimony so that He can use it. Which makes me think about, so God has to abuse us to give us a purpose.
So when we shed some light on that, then we go into understanding that in the suffering, in the process of the suffering is the lesson. It's not about the end result. Everybody focuses on Job and what he got after the fact. He got 10-fold of this and 100-fold of that and 5,000.
It wasn't about that.
It wasn't about that. The Job 42 verse 5 says, for by the hearing of the ear I have known about you, but now I see you. And was that part, but now I see you.
Wow.
That was the ultimate gift in the story of Job.
And it goes back to, does God know you? And my mentor used to ask me, are you worthy of being tested by God?
That's interesting. Am I worthy?
And I was like, if He takes it all away, I don't know. My identity will still stand. And if I will still worship this God. And it was a very interesting question. I had to look inside of myself.
Yes, and that was the purpose of the test.
Because it speaks about adopting, because Job had to adopt.
He had to adapt. He had to adapt. Guess what? Yes, he understood when his friends sat there and they mocked him. When his wife came to talk to him. When he got the news of everything that is happening to him. First he thought, his first thing was, this is God. But
does it have to do with what Paul said when he said, I've learned to be content, whether I have much or I have less?
Look, what Paul speaks about, and we need to understand it contextually.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So Paul was traveling, and he was always traveling. And he was a nomad, right? He was a nomad apostle.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about Paul is that when he came to cities and he met with people and very, very uppity people.
Yeah.
And what do they do first? Phineas, what are you driving? Because you must come and see my Merc. Phineas, really, you must see where I live. What do you do? Well, what is your job?
Yeah.
So all these things was used. All these itemized things were used to measure Paul's success.
Yeah.
And Paul says the success does not lie in that.
Yeah.
It's not about be content with what you have.
It's not about what you have, but who you have, I guess.
And I just want to go further with that. About not just what you have, not just who you have, but being content in the mission.
Yeah.
Because your dreams could have been different to your mission.
Right. That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Your dreams could have been, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to be lavish. I'm going to be out there. I'm going to make decisions.
Yeah.
And then my path goes, that you will suffer quietly. You will suffer.
Yeah.
And your relationship and my relationship with God,
yeah,
that is going to be the scent of your suffering.
Let's speak about the dangers of control. You said being a controlling freak.
The danger,
and then the importance of surrender.
The danger with control comes out of the ego.
Yeah,
I'm a very, and I've come to realize that I'm a subtle controller. I might not show my control in my behavior, but my control is in my thoughts. I will do this.
Yeah.
I will do that.
Yeah.
I've made up my mind the next 20 moves on this chessboard.
Yeah.
Right? The other person, that where control comes out in their behavior, they will show you.
Control is good. The Bible speaks about self-control, but not the control of others and things.
Correct.
But the control of self.
Look, yeah. And I'll get into that right now.
Yeah.
So I just need to get to this controlling, understanding what this control is about.
Right.
I pray, yet I want my own way. You know what, God? I'm going to ask you for advice, but you know what? Your advice must be along these lines.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or along these lines. And that control is that I want to be at a particular destination at a particular time.
Yeah.
Yes, you get people with OCD.
Yeah.
Right? And they want to control. And they write it out, and you have an itinerary, and you have an agenda.
Yeah.
Right. That's on the one part of the continuum, on the one end of the scale. On the other end of the scale is Marlon, who seems very laid back.
Yeah.
Right? You find that Marlon very laid back, very easy. But when he implements things, he's in control of it.
Some people will rather have to do the project by themselves than to invite
Absolutely.
other people in.
Why? Because I can do it best. Nobody does it better than me.
Is that the pride and the ego?
It is.
Because sometimes maybe you can do it better, but together.
Or maybe, just think about it this way.
Yeah.
Maybe we can do it better. Maybe I can do it better than anybody else. But I'm not supposed to do it.
So how do you know when it's time to surrender and let go? I know what the importance of really letting go of things, because I feel like some of us are killed by the things that we carry.
Yeah.
That we refuse to let go. If you hold on a glass for a very long time of water, the longer you hold on to it, the heavier it becomes.
Yeah.
And then sometimes we just need to let go of things. But I don't think we are at a space where we can trust God that is actually in control and knows better than us.
Look, for me, the control, and from my personal experience, the control is to stop thinking about it.
Right.
It's to clear my mind from it, because that's where the control starts. The control starts when I start manipulating in my mind. I start manipulating the plan.
The outcome.
I start manipulating that outcome in my mind.
Yeah.
I start going, so if I don't have money, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. But yet I ask God, please show me the way.
It's the thing we spoke about delegation. You give people responsibility with no authority because you want to be in control.
And that's what we do to God.
Is it because maybe we want to get the credit?
Yeah.
Or the glory?
No, I think more it's that old famous song, I Did It My Way. I'm surprised to hear that sometimes that I still want to do it my way. You see, my way was the best. You remember the old one, I told you so?
Yeah.
That's where the control comes from. I told you so. It's the ego wanting to be right.
Is it because of fear of failure? We are afraid to fail.
No.
That's why we want to be in control.
No, I would rather be in control and fail than leave somebody else in control and fail. And that's what we walk around with.
Wow.
I walk around with this thing that at least I know I failed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's going to plague me to death.
How important is that when it comes to parents wanting to control the lives of their children?
Again, an old saying that the quote, and it comes out of the book, is that parents want to prepare the path for the kids. that is the control. I want to live through my kids. I want to live my existence because I never had an iPhone. Now I want to live through an 8-year-old who with his iPhone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So and this is, and you know where that problem comes about?
Yeah.
Now I become my child's friend.
I wanted to be a doctor. I couldn't be a doctor. Now my child is going to I'm going to push my child to be a doctor.
Absolutely.
But it becomes more about you than it is about them.
Correct. And when I want to be my child's friend, that's where the problems start.
Yeah.
My child remains my child.
Yeah, because it's very hard to correct your friends sometimes.
It is.
Because if they refuse, they may endanger the vision.
But you know what's worse than that? I let my friends see certain characteristics of me that I shouldn't let my child expose to.
Wow.
How many families where the kids have become the crutch of one of the two parents?
Yeah.
You know, your mom is like this. You know, your dad is like this.
Yeah.
You know, the parents are busy separating, going through a divorce. They make the child the crutch. You know, it's an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old. And they talk to this 9-year-old. So that 9-year-old forgets how to be a 9-year-old. That 9-year-old now has to be a 29-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that little boy or girl now has to soothe and they have to be there for the mother or the father.
Right.
That adaptability is negative.
Yeah.
Because now that little being in its innocence now has to adapt and be a grown-up.
So now the child has to conform to the expectations of the parents.
Correct.
Rather than the parents creating an environment for the child to evolve and be who they want to be.
Correct. And now I answer that. We took this long time for me to answer that question about how do we identify what we need to change.
Right.
We need to unpack within ourselves what I need and don't need on this journey.
Right.
So, Heidi and I there's no kids at home. They're out, they're at uni, they're out. So we have an empty nest.
Yeah.
There are certain...
And now you have to adopt to...
So now we got to start dating again. Because for the last X amount of years, we only knew each other as parents raising kids.
And you found your identity in being the parents of those kids. Now
in the functionality of it. Now we got to adapt. Now this adaptability comes. So Jesus Christ says, you know, just remember who you are.
Yeah.
When you see me, you see the Father. Do what you want to do. But see me. And when you see me with clarity, then you know you're on the right path.
Yeah.
You know, when I start fading in your vision and your eyes are misting up, remember the enemy has then got something to do with that. So,
all the time.
So keep me clear in your sights.
Yeah.
Then the adaptability happens naturally through the Spirit.
Yeah.
You'll find that for example, the weirdest thing that ever happened to me as a youngster was losing 20 Rand, and that 20 Rand was a Christmas gift so that I could buy myself a Walkman. I lost the 20 Rand in Parow Sanlam Center.
You still remember that?
I remember it very clearly.
Sounds like trauma there.
It was. I was 12 years old. I was distraught.
Wow.
Right? So that was losing it. Losing the money for the Walkman. The value that I attach to something, right, as a youngster, I need to be careful that I do not attach that same value to something now that I'm an adult.
I mean, somebody said don't build your home in things or even in people, because once you lose those things or lose those people, then you become homeless.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when you look at this, it's the maturity of the growth in terms of the adaptability. I no longer need that.
Right.
So through our friendship circle and through extensions, we can see the dance with the enemy.
How important is preparation though for change? Because a lot of times, like, we are about to experience a storm in Cape Town, and now people are aware of that, and now that's a call for adaptation.
Okay, so before we go there, I just want to get this dance because it links into what you're going to say now. So when they have the dance with the enemy, it's one or two couples that we know that are splitting up.
Yeah.
Right. But the conversation is around that issue all the time.
Right.
I mean, it's about, he's such a this, she's such a that, and the person.
I had to adopt, because I was a married man. Now you go through divorce.
Absolutely.
Now you are single again,
and now you're going to get married again.
You know what I'm saying? And
so now you got to change.
Yeah, exactly.
But you have to adapt without any residue of where you come from.
What I learned with that is that God is a God of seasons.
Yes.
It cannot be winter the whole time, or summer the whole time,
No.
or autumn the whole time.
Yeah.
You gotta change with times.
Absolutely.
If you don't change, you're in trouble.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now I want to come back to this pending storm that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So now the difference between this pending storm and the storm that we were waiting for 10 years ago is that we now have technology to forewarn us of the storm.
Yeah.
We have grown.
We have knowledge.
We have knowledge.
Yeah.
And with the knowledge of the storm, we need to prepare differently.
Yeah. That's why the Bible says people perish because of lack of knowledge.
Absolutely.
Once you have knowledge, you have power.
So you'll find recurring things happening in the greater scheme of things, right? But you have the knowledge. How silly it is when the same thing happens to you and you have a Groundhog Day. You wake up that same morning 20 times and you do everything exactly the same.
Yeah.
And that's what happens to our existence.
This I think is a call for, people who are used to sitting on the same pew all the time.
Yes.
There are some people who have a chair in a church.
Yes.
That's like their seat.
Yeah. Look, there's the form. There's a form in the chair already of where they fit in.
If somebody sits on that,
he said there's trouble.
It becomes difficult.
Yes.
I've seen it. People find it very difficult to sit on the other side.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it's because people want, their hearing aid and their eyes, they prefer to sit in a certain parts. But sometimes some of us, we don't like being disturbed.
No.
Because that challenges us to be in a certain position. And experience somebody that we actually never discovered. Because I can tell you right now, I'm not the same man that I was 3 years ago.
Absolutely.
But for me to become that man, I had to learn how to maneuver around life.
While you're talking about, the things that we are used to, I'm just thinking about this. Imagine Jesus in his resurrected body joins us for praise and worship or service on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And what he does is totally different to what we think should be doing.
They'll probably stone him.
We'll probably say, what is this dude doing?
DJ.
Yeah, absolutely. It's because that we don't recognize that the source, Jesus Christ, remains constant. Whatever happens around it and on the periphery, though 10,000 fall on my left or 10,000 on my right, what does Paul say? I see my mark. I see my goal.
How important is that? Because you look at the life of Jesus, that he was on his way to die for us. But in between, he stopped and did a lot of ministry.
No, absolutely.
On his way. But a lot of us, we like, okay, this is the destination. I'm going to shoot to the destination. But there are so many things in between that we have to stop and do to get to the destination.
A perfect example. Mary and Martha. You took long, man. If you were here, you would have been alive.
That's African time.
Hey, yeah. Lazarus is now dead and now you pitch up. Can you imagine how angry they were at him?
Yeah.
And he goes the same way he goes to the little daughter of Jairus.
Yeah.
She's asleep, man. Come on.
God's timing.
Come on, man. She's asleep. They just wake her up.
Yeah.
And he wakes her up out of death. So, in my view, the plan, the inability to flow, the inability to adapt is concrete for me.
Right.
Because the plan is concrete.
Yeah. I have a thing every single time when I come to Museumberg side, because I live in the other side of the world, in Weinberg. I usually spare 30 minutes because I know I cannot have a meeting in Museumberg with somebody without passing through the unhoused.
Yes.
Because I had to have 30 minutes of greeting them.
Correct.
Before I go into, Hanson Lloyd or whatever.
Yeah.
And if I don't do that, they see it like, you didn't have time for us. So now I'm intentional with it of, hey, okay, I'm going to spare 30 minutes, greet these guys before I walk into my meeting.
Absolutely.
So we need to be conscious of, hey, change does not just happen.
No.
Sometimes you got to plan it. and adopt into the environment that you live in.
And guess what? And sometimes we got to live it.
True.
We got to live the flexibility of the plan.
Yeah.
And here's one part of the plan that we never look at. We never plan to fail. We never plan to miss. We never plan for change.
Is that where the plan B comes from? We gotta have a plan B.
No,
C?
Look, sometimes our plan B and C is just as rigid as plan A.
I mean, some people say you don't have enough faith if you have a plan B or plan C.
So, I hear what you're saying, but here's my answer.
Yeah.
I'm on my way to see Phineas.
Yeah.
That is my plan. That is set.
Yeah.
Right, so I've got the plan, I've got my itinerary, I've got my map, I've got everything. Lord, you have answered me, I must go and visit Phineas.
And then the traffic goes bananas.
And then the traffic goes bananas. And somebody knocks into me. Or somebody gets ill in the car in front of me. Or I happen to have a life-altering discussion.
Listen, I used to think that I'm a Christian until I started driving. Because
for the test?
I thought I was patient until I started driving.
No.
Because then, the person in front of me was delivering me. Sometimes deliverance happens on the street in the car, not at church. I learned that. Now I'm used to it.
Yeah. So what was more important? So God sends you to Phineas, but he has a plan for you.
Ooh.
The Spirit then says, the guy in the next car, roll down your window. Tell him that Jesus loves him. No, I can't tell him that.
And that is as important as the meeting with Phineas.
Even more. Because in that moment when the Spirit revealed, that person could have given his life to Christ. In that moment.
Yeah.
But because of my fear, like Marlon is, no. Heidi, I can't talk now. I'm in the zone. I must focus. I got Bible study. I got to focus. I got to do this. But what if somebody has been called to salvation? If I just lift my eyes up and I go, you know what? How are you doing? Do you know that Jesus loves you? How amazing that someone that answered a call and his first reaction to the phone call was when he saw the name, he went, I don't have time for this.
Right.
I will call the person back. But then something tripped in him and he answered the call. And the call on the other side says, I am about to take my life. I am phoning you to greet you.
Yeah.
I couldn't leave this existence without greeting you.
And it says a lot about how important, yes, have the vision, but it's important that we value people.
Absolutely.
Because when we value the vision more than we value people, who are the people who are supposed to fulfill the vision with us?
Yes. So the vision might be the attraction to the path, but it might not be the path on which I need to be.
Right. And it may require the person that you stop for.
Absolutely.
In order to fulfill the vision. That's why sometimes they say stop for the one.
Absolutely. And when I stop for that, when I become that good Samaritan, then the vision no longer matters. Because it's about the here and the now. It's about the person. And even better, he goes, look after him. And when I come back, even if he's not here, I will pay you.
Yeah.
That's how flexible he was. That's the adaptability.
Yeah.
But what I want to do is I want to adapt. And this is important. And I know we're coming to the end of our show. This is the important part. We want to adapt Christ to our lives. We want to change Christ so that he fits into my existence.
So rather than us adopting to Christ, we want Christ to adopt to us.
Absolutely.
And then now, who's Lord now?
Who's Lord now? Because, look, this is my house. This is my house.
God, you must approve this plan.
Absolutely. Wow. And if you don't, look, now we're going to negotiation with him.
We're threatened.
Yeah, we start threatening him.
I'm going to leave.
No, I'm leaving, dude. Look, I'm not going to mention your name again. God, I'm done with you. Right? So that happens when I change and I adapt God and Jesus Christ into my life.
Sometimes we think we're doing God a favor by by following him. And salvation is more about us than it is about him.
The arrogance of our children gives us insight into our arrogance with our relationship with Jesus Christ.
Come on now.
the arrogance of our children.
Come on.
She is my mother. He is my father. They wanted me here. They will provide for me. I want those shoes. I want the phone. I want this. Guess what?
The entitlement of the prodigal son.
I didn't ask to be here. How many times does that conversation take place between myself and my Redeemer?
Very, very often.
Very often.
Very often.
So I don't leave space.
Yeah.
Because I want to negotiate with him.
Wow. Listen.
So I didn't submit.
I'm looking at our time here. And I think for me, what I'm learning from this is that it's important to be flexible. It is important to surrender.
Absolutely.
It is important to make Lord the Lord of all.
Of all.
Of all.
Capital letters. And in that all, when you look at the fine print, it includes Marlon.
Yeah.
It includes Phineas. You know? So before we go, let's do the normal thing.
Yeah.
Socials.
Yeah.
So it's Dr. Dr. Marlon, Marlin.
Yeah.
Hoffman, Hoffman. You can search me on Facebook. There's an Instagram. There's a YouTube channel. Please watch. Please subscribe. 1,000 apologies. And please remind me next week that the number is 061 and not 065. I apologize to the 065.
Yeah.
And
there is a request for this to be online. So if you can share it on your social media, the podcast, so people can listen to it.
It will be online. It will reflect online. Please drop me an email at info, or better said, drop me a message on WhatsApp 073 011 5617 073 011 5617. Drop me a message, drop me a WhatsApp. Please get the book Marlon and the book Academia and Spirituality, where my two worlds meet. I speak about this extensively, and please join me on this journey. Come on, drop the message, purchase the book, I'll courier to you. And we can have fun and we can have these discussions.
And you can make sure that you sign it as well, because you sign
always with a message.
Always,
yes, because you give my books away for years.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is Dr. Marlon. Always with him every Tuesday from 6 until 7 on the dot. I know for some of you, this is not enough of a discussion. Some of you guys are asking for 2 hours. Keep on praying. Maybe the Lord will open the door for that. But thank you so much for tuning in. God bless you. Take care of yourself. We'll see you same time, same place next week. Take care.